Well, good afternoon and good morning, depending on wherever you are dialing in from. Welcome to this week's Kowalah Wednesday webinar. If this is the first of our Wednesday webinars that you've joined, we get together for an hour every Wednesday and talk about one sort of top topic that is going on in the world of AI. There is so much going on. It's so difficult to keep on top of things. And I say that as someone, we do this all the time, that this provides us a nice regular spot where we can bring you up to speed with what's going on and hopefully teach you something that's working well for us and for our clients. Each week we go through a similar process. So we're going to spend probably today maybe 30 minutes or so, 40 minutes on our main topic. And I'm going to introduce you to our wonderful Karolina. They're going to talk about a little bit in a moment. Then we have a spot where we talk about AI in the news. As I say, there's just so much going on. And so we distill that down to what is important for you to know from a business perspective so that you can take that back to your teams and your companies. And then we've got an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you might have. Now, these may be questions about what we've talked about. You've got a question about Karolina or some of the latest updates, or it could be anything. Hey, Charlie, I'm trying to build this prompt. I'm trying to build this skill, and I'm not quite sure how to do that. And we'll endeavor to answer those questions while we're on the call. But I would also say, especially as we go through our main topic, focusing on agents, if you've got questions as we go through, then don't keep them on ice. Let's just dive in and ask your question. And you can do that in a couple of ways. So depending on what device you're on, up at the top or down at the bottom, you'll see either a Q&A panel, and I'll just make sure here that I can see that on my screen. Let me go to the Q&A so it's visible. And then there is also a chat panel as well. So feel free to ask whatever you want in there, and I'll try and keep an eye on it. My wonderful colleague Caitlin is also on the call as well, and she'll keep an eye and point me in the right direction if I'm missing anything. So let's get into this amazing topic. Karolina, how we built an AI project manager that works like a human team member. And this is just so topical at the moment. Often we hear that 2026 is the year of the agent, and everyone's talking about, have you got an agent? Have you got an agent? And then the follow-up question is, I'm not quite sure I really know what an agent is. So can you help me with that? So what is Karolina? Well, let me explain that, and then we'll get into a little bit of the detail about how Karolina works and how we built her and how you can go about building your own. Well, let me just switch over to my Slack. It's going to be the easiest place. Here is Karolina. She is our AI-powered project manager. And here I am in Slack. And if I go right, I'm going to send her a message. Hey, Karolina, Charlie here. Can you just give me an update on our demo companies and the projects that we've got going on there? Now, one of the hardest things I have found, this is my little caveat, having built Karolina, is then teaching her not to give us the information about our clients so that I can do a demo. So hopefully this will give us a demo mode. Karolina is now doing some work in the background, and in a few seconds, she's going to come back with her response. While she's busy working away, I'm going to send her an email as well. So let me come out of here, and then hopefully I can send an email. I've given Karolina her own email address. So she is Karolina@kowalah.com. So she's set up in our Google Workspace. I can send her emails. She can send me emails. So I'm going to say here, demo mode, status update. Hey, Karolina, Charlie here. Can you give us an update on our demo mode company projects? And let me know where I need to dive in and focus. So I'll just send that and then whiz back here. So what Karolina is doing in the background is actually loading up all of the information about our projects, in this case, demo mode projects. She's navigating around all of those projects and understanding the projects, the initiatives that are going on, the risks, the tasks, the dependencies, and then typically 2 to 3 minutes later comes back with a report. So I'll let her carry on working there, and I'll show you a bit more about how that is working and what it looks like when that comes through. So here is an example of that happening in Slack, and I'll show you the real example in a minute. Hi, Karolina, can you give me an update on our demo mode projects? And then 2 or 3 minutes later, hi, Charlie, here's an overview of our demo mode projects. This is what Acme Corp is. We've got 2 active projects. Here's the situation. So that's super helpful for me. And I find myself asking Karolina about these kind of updates when I'm planning for a meeting with a customer and we want a good update on what's going on. This is an example of the email scenario. Hi, Karolina, can you give me an update on all our demo mode projects? And then here she comes through. Here's the full rundown across our 3 demo projects and 2 expert requests. And she's providing me with these nice templates and updates that I can then focus in on. The beauty of Karolina having her own email address is that I can then reply back to these emails and I can say, I've got more information about this that you don't have. So can you actually update the due date for this? Can you mark that task as completed? So she's able to then take action on that and then update the systems directly. And then the third thing, which I find super helpful from Karolina, is providing clients with status updates directly. In my time working for a large Salesforce consultancy, we should, as project manager, well, I wasn't a project manager, but the project managers should be sending out a lovely status update to our clients every week to give them an update on what's going on, what's working well, what's not working, any challenges, tracking the budget. And as it always happened, these things ended up going out at like 5:45 on a Friday, because by the time the project manager had managed to get all of the information from all of the consultants, time tracking, status updates, as everyone uploaded everything into the platform, it just took too long. And so then the customer gets this very annoying status update as they're getting into their weekend. Now with Karolina, she sends these out 12 o'clock or so on a lunchtime on a Monday, and it's just always up to date with everything that has been going on in the project. So, Karolina, what's going on here? How is she able to provide all of this analysis and information on all of our projects? So for me, one of the biggest changes in my own thinking has been to move from changing thinking about building software that a human is going to use. So let me build an agent that a human project manager might use. Can I give them some skills? Can I give them some interaction with other systems so that the project manager could use that system? And instead, moving beyond that and saying, right, well, let's build the actual person themselves. What does it mean to build an AI project manager that is not requiring another human to look at that skill, to look at that screen? So the first thing I go through is thinking about, okay, what would the human project manager need in order to do their job and to do it well? And so you think a little bit about the onboarding that you might give to a human as they are starting their project management role. Well, I'm going to give them an email account. Of course, I'm going to give them an email account. Karolina's joining the company. Here's your email. This is how you can get information in. It's how you can share information out with other people in the organization. As part of that, you're going to have access to a calendar. This is so that we can invite you to meetings, and then you can join these meetings and interact with the client that way. I'm going to give you a Slack account, maybe. Maybe it's a Teams account. Maybe it's a Google Chat account. But I'm going to give you a way of having instant messaging so that you can speak with other members of the team. Then we think about the other systems that the project manager might need access to. So maybe Salesforce is your CRM. Maybe it's also where you're managing your projects, which is how we did when we were at the Salesforce consulting business. Maybe you need access to your finance system, which in our case is Xero, where you're tracking invoices and payments from that client. And maybe you've got other systems that are in a database. So in Kowalah's example, we have all of our customer records and information in a Postgres database called Superbase. And in that, we track our customers' organizations, projects, initiatives, tasks, risks, everything like that. So this is what we would give the human. And this is what we need to give to our agent as well for them to be able to do the job. If they don't have access to these things, it's like they're running blind. Well, if I can't receive emails, if I can't see Salesforce, if I can't see Slack, well, how am I going to be able to do my job? So let me walk you through a little bit about how Karolina works, sort of step by step. And whilst Karolina is an AI project manager, we're going to use this as we start to build another agent in a moment. But before I do that, let me just explain the name Karolina. So Karolina was a project manager that I worked with at this Salesforce consultancy for a number of years. I was a seller and she was a project manager that worked on some of our largest Salesforce programs. The reason why this name came to me, I worked with a number of great project managers, but the first project that she worked on, I remember the client saying, she's the best project manager I've ever worked with. And so that's why the name came from. But also this importance of if you give your agent a human name, it really helps guide a lot of the conversations, the decisions, the discussions about what you're going to build. If I built project manager agent, I fall into the trap of thinking that this is a software that another project manager might use. Here is a project management tool like any other project management tool. But when I'm building Karolina, I'm building the person rather than a tool. I'm just going to go to a quick question here. You mentioned Karolina returned real client data instead of demo data just now. How do you enforce environment isolation and prevent unintended data exposure? Really good question. And this comes back to I've built Karolina as a production tool. She has access to all of the systems. What I'd attempted to do was to give her some instructions that when I say demo mode, don't use all of your instructions. So if I was doing this again, which I will do, I'll actually build another Karolina that does not have access to real client data. But as I'm going to show you a little bit later, I'll show you how we can enforce that Karolina only has access to certain client information, depending on who is speaking to her. So let's start on the left and I'll work around the process. So firstly, triggers, like what gets Karolina to start work. There's two. There's inbound. So either I send her a Slack message or I send her an email. Maybe there is a system update in Salesforce or in HubSpot that as something happens that generates some kind of trigger that is going to go and say, oh, Karolina, you need to look at this kind of work. And so this is the inbound request where I've got a question, I'm planning for a meeting. But then she also has a number of automated triggers. So every morning at 9 o'clock, she sends me and our delivery team a review of all of the projects that we're working on. Every Monday at 12 o'clock, she sends a client status update to the client. This is the status of your project. And then we also get a weekly planner on Friday, which sets us up for all of the project work that we've got next week, upcoming tasks, risks, and so on. So think about it these two ways. Some things are human triggered, and others, Karolina is just doing this because we've asked her to do that. Once those triggers have been fired, either inbound or automated, then Karolina exists as a project that is running on a platform called Vercel. You might have come across things like Cloudflare. These are cloud hosting platforms, and Vercel is one that is really leading the way when it comes to building AI platforms and AI agents. This Vercel project, it runs on a framework called Next.js, which you may be familiar with. And the core of the project handles a lot of deterministic work. So nothing to do with AI. It handles these inbound triggers. So when a Slack message comes in, it is going to do this. When an email comes in, it is going to do that. It handles a thing called Workspace hydration that I'm going to go into in a bit more detail in a minute. But this basically gives Karolina her view of the world. And this, to the question just there, was the bit that I was trying to handle with a demo. And actually, she had full visibility of everything that we've trained her to have. So she has that access. The Vercel project handles these cron jobs, which if you're not a developer, it's basically a workflow that starts on a timer. So this is all of her automated workflows, daily and weekly, is these cron jobs. And then it also handles some of the communication that comes out, like when she sends me back an email, when she sends me back a Slack message. This is being handled through the Vercel project, very deterministic. Now, within the Vercel project, this is like sort of Russian dolls. Within the Vercel project is a piece of Vercel functionality called a Vercel sandbox. And a Vercel sandbox is a segregated area that can run its own file system, its own set of data. It can run its own applications in a very segregated and protected environment. It can be restricted in terms of what it can do, what it's got access to. So I think of this is Karolina's house, is the sandbox. This is only fired up when I'm chatting to Karolina or when she's doing her work. So the project exists all the time. The sandbox only fires up when Karolina is working. And then what happens in the sandbox? Well, in the sandbox, we run a thing called the Claude Agent SDK. Now, if you're a developer, you might have come across Claude Code. Claude Code is fantastic from a development perspective. It allows developers to write code, but on a long-running basis where Claude is doing so much of this work over a long period of time. What the Anthropic team realized is that this is a great, it's called a harness, a great harness that is good for more than just code. And actually it can be used for doing a lot of things. And we use it for running Karolina. So if you want to say, what is Karolina? Karolina is this agent running on the Claude Agent SDK. She has access to the different Claude models, Opus, Sonnet, and Haiku. She has access to skills that we've given her, and I'm going to show you them in a minute. She's got access to sub-agents, sort of little minions that work for Karolina, and I'll show you them in a minute. She's got her own memory. She knows that she's Karolina. She knows that she works for Kowalah. She knows how to do various things. And she's got access to a number of different tools that we've given her. The ability to search the web, the ability to create files, edit files, update files. And then she's also got access to an MCP server that we have given her. Now, for those of you that don't know, MCP is a protocol that also has come from Anthropic, but is now widely used across the ecosystem. And it stands for Model Context Protocol, MCP. Model, the model being Claude, context, how do we give it access to this kind of information? And then the protocol, just like SMTP or HTTP for email or web, This is how do we give information and data to these models. And so we've built an MCP server that gives our agents access to the context that they need in order to do their job. So in Karolina's example, she needs access to Superbase in order to be able to see organizations, projects, initiatives, and so on. She needs access to email to be able to read and to send emails. She needs access to HubSpot to be able to understand what open deals that we've got with our existing clients. And she needs access to Zero to be able to see invoices and things like that that are relation to the projects that she's working on. So I think of the MCP server as being like the eyes and the ears that we give Karolina. What does she need to be able to see and take action on in order to do her job? I'm just going to come back to a question here. Is it possible to build something on Claude instead of adding Vercel to the tech stack? Good question. So the Claude Agent SDK can run wherever you want. You can run the Claude Agent SDK on your local laptop. You could run it on a shared virtual server that you've got yourself. Where these sandboxes come in, and it could either be Vercel or Cloudflare. They've got a few of them that have this sandbox. Is the ability for Karolina to spin up on her own whenever she wants without my machine or any local machine running. And so if I just come out of here and oh, I didn't mean to do that. Just go here. I'm going to send you some of these links afterwards, but this hosting the agent SDK talks about this container-based sandboxing. And here are some of the examples. We're using the Vercel sandbox, but you could use Cloudflare, and there's a few other of these self-hosted options if you've got something set up here. But the key thing here is giving Karolina the ability to run and fire off everything she's doing without a human needing to be at a screen, asking her questions and getting her to work. So we've had the trigger on the left, either inbound or automated, which she's then running in this project. She's then firing up her sandbox, which is running the Claude Agent SDK. And then she's using the MCP server as and when she decides. And then having done her work, she's then coming back to give an output. And we've given her access to Slack to be able to send a message back to us. We've given her access to email. And she's also got the ability to actually update Superbase. So often I might go back to her and say, can you add a new risk? Because I'm worried about this client not being available for doing testing next week. Can you move out this decision point because client's on holiday? She's able to update those details in the Kowalah platform without a human having to do that. So that's kind of the overall structure of how Karolina works. Now, I talked a little bit about Claude Code and an agent and why Claude Code is proving so powerful. And it's all about this concept of an agentic loop. And I'll try and explain that to you because it really helps bring to life about why is this different from just chat. Like, why don't I just sit there and ask a Claude skill or a ChatGPT project what's going on? So with an agentic loop, yes, you put your initial prompt, which either has come from my Slack message or it's come from one of these automated requests. And then what the agentic loop, this is the Claude Agent SDK, is able to do is, number one, go and gather context. Okay, I've been asked a question about this Acme project. I need to go and gather context. So number one, I'm going to go and have a look at my file store, the file directory that I've been given access to, and I'm going to navigate around and read the various files. I'm going to come up to speed with that. Then maybe I'm going to go and have a look at HubSpot to go and find out if there's any active deals with this. Now I'm going to go and have a look in Zero and see if there's any outstanding invoices. Maybe I'm going to go and do a web search to see if there's any news updates about what this company is doing. So that's the gathering the context. Next up is taking action. So in Karolina's example, this is right. Okay, I need to create a daily update. So now I'm going to go and get all the information that I need, and I'm going to do my analysis, and I'm now going to write that update. And now I'm going to verify my results. So I've written this this update, and now I need to go and double check it against what I've been asked to do, against the templates that I've been provided. Maybe I've been provided with some validation instructions that I need to check before I finish my job. And then if there are any errors here or issues, I'm going to go back around this loop. And this loop might run for 4 minutes. It might run for 20 minutes. It might run for 40 minutes. But what we're optimizing for is getting the job done, not on coming back immediately with a chat. Once that agentic loop has completed, then it is done, and it's going to send us back our status update or whatever that might be. And depending on how we're interacting with Karolina, I might be commenting back, I might be providing some updates via Slack, or if it's her doing her sort of weekly or daily sort of updates, I'm not involved in that at all because she's just doing the work and sending it to me when she's done. So file systems. File systems are an agent's best friend, and this learning has come from Claude Code. What the Anthropic team realized as they built out Claude Code was that agents love a file system because they can navigate around it. They can see how the different files interrelate with each other. They can go up the hierarchy. They can go down the hierarchy. And so instead of us having to do some kind of complex embedding and vectorized search, we're just asking a question, what can you tell me about Acme's projects? And Karolina is able to navigate around this file structure. So then it's a case of saying, right, well, how do we give Karolina a file system? Because not everything that we are working on is already in a file system. And this is where the hydration process comes in that is provided through the Vercel sandbox functionality. So when a sandbox is created, and if I go back here quickly to the sandbox, when the sandbox is hydrated, we've provided some code that says, depending on what your request is, you're going to go and look for various files, directories in our database and hydrate that file system for Karolina to be able to have a look at. So when we do our daily updates, we want to hydrate the workspace that Karolina's got access to with everything that is working in the Kowalah platform. So all of our organizations that have got active projects, all of the initiatives, tasks, risks, decisions for each of those projects. And that allows Karolina to be able to look around all of those files and do all of her work. If I was to ask Karolina, can you just give me an update on acme.com? Well, the Vercel project is only going to hydrate the Acme project and so on. So we only want to give Karolina access to the information that she needs in order to be able to do the job that she needs. But this hydration is so important to being able to allow Karolina to do the work that she can do so well. I used this slide a couple of weeks ago, but I think it's useful to make this point about why agents and why Karolina loves files. Because after all, I could just create an API integration into Supabase, and Karolina could go looking around in that Supabase database to get the information. The way I think about it is that when you give your agent a file system, it's like allowing them to walk around a library or a bookshop. So I asked Karolina about Acme as a project, and she goes and finds the Acme shelf. And that's great, but she can also see, oh, below that shelf of that the project is the initiatives. Oh, and below that I can see the expert requests. And actually next to that, I can see xyz.com projects. So she's able to browse around as she's doing her work. And this is what agents are so good at, navigating this bookshelf. I want to contrast that with ordering a book off Amazon, which is, right, what can you tell me about Acme? Oh, I'll go and order the Acme book from Amazon. Off we go with an API call. Back comes the Acme book. I now read the Acme book and I go, that's not quite what I want. I'm going to search for another book and I'm going to place another order, and off we go and come back. So we can get this information from Salesforce, from HubSpot, from Google Drive, from SharePoint, but we're doing it in this kind of iterative process. It's so much more effective for these agents if you can just hydrate and give them everything to navigate around. Just reading a question here from David. Hi, David. Hope you're well. How would you define the boundary between a chatbot, an AI agent, and a truly agentic system, and where Karolina sits on that spectrum in terms of autonomy and decision making? Really good question. And this question really came to what was the catalyst for building Karolina. So I had built, to all intents and purposes, all of the skills that allow Karolina to do her work, but it was in my application, actually a desktop application called Kowalah Reserved. And so whilst Karolina was able to help me, it meant that I had to be the one there asking the questions. But I wanted Karolina to take the lead and to send me stuff. I want you to update me on a Monday morning rather than me having to message you. And this was the sort of the genesis of saying, right, actually now we need to take the Claude Agent SDK and put it in this Vercel sandbox where it can run on its own accord and actually work independently. And for me, that was this real transition between something that's running here, a human with a screen in front of me, and now an actual agent that doesn't need me, doesn't need the screen for it to do its work. So Karolina now exists up in her little sandbox, her little studio flat that she lives in. We're able to trigger her through these various systems. But now, how do we get Karolina to be a good project manager? How can she do the things that we want a project manager to do? And this is where skills come in. And this is a key part of the Claude Agent SDK, is the concept of a skill. And I'll show you an example of one of these in a minute. So these are the skills that we have given to Karolina. Every time she hydrates her sandbox and her workspace, she has access to these skills that are automatically provided. And we built them based around all of the things that I want her to do. I want you to do a daily digest. I want you to be able to audit a project. I want you to be able to do a health check. I want you to send a weekly report. And each of these skills describes to Karolina the way of doing that thing. Now, she doesn't use all of these skills all of the time, but when a request comes in, can you give me a project health check for acme.com? She goes, oh, I've got a skill called project health check. Let me read that. Okay, suddenly I know how to do project health checks and I can follow that. So what is a skill? Well, a skill follows a standard format. And whilst I talk about these coming from Claude, they were certainly created and defined by Anthropic, but they've turned them into an open standard. So you're going to see these arrive in ChatGPT and Gemini and other platforms imminently. But they all follow a standard format. So a skill is a folder, in this case, Daily Digest. And at the root of that folder, you have a skill.md file. And this skill.md file is basically the way of describing how to do something. So you can see the format of that up at the top here. So the name is Daily Digest. The description a morning project digest for the team, use when the trigger is cron daily. It reads the pre-hydrated workspace files and does these things. Now, the description is important because the way that Claude works is that it always loads up all of the descriptions of all of your skills into its context window, regardless of as you're chatting. And so then if you're having a conversation and you say, can you help me with a daily digest? Claude goes, I've got access to a daily digest skill. I'm going to use that. And then it loads up the rest of the skill. So the description is really, really useful. What this thing does, when to use it, when to trigger it. And then you get into the description of the skill. This is just human language. We spend a lot of time with our clients just writing these things out or using Claude to help write them out. This is what this skill does. This is when to use it. And it just describes the process. In addition, in a skill, we can provide it with assets. So these are templates, so blank documents that explain the types of things that need to go into the work that the skill is going to create. So in this example, we've given it the template email that should be sent out for each of these project updates. And then we've given it a reference, and you could have one or more of these. And here we've given it a health scoring for a project. And this allows Karolina to have a look at each project and then go red, amber, green based on these reasons. So we've taught Karolina, as a project manager, this is what I want you to do on your daily digest. This is how you do your job. And this is the template that you need to fill in. And I think a lot about this is just like onboarding a human project manager. Here's our standard operating procedure. This is what I want you to do on this cadence. This is the template you should use. We're just describing that, but we're giving it to Karolina instead of a human. And so these are all the different skills that she's got. Whenever there is a request or an idea that we've got for working with Karolina and she doesn't have that skill yet, we create a new skill and give it to her so that she's got it in her sandbox. Next thing is sub-agents. So sub-agents is a capability in the Claude Agent SDK, and it allows the main agent, who is Karolina, to offload work to sub-agents so that they can go off and do various things. So we've given Karolina 4 minions that she can choose to use, and she's the one that chooses when to use them. A project analyzer that goes and looks at an individual project and identifies the risks and blockers. A capacity checker that looks across our team and works out who's overloaded and whether we can take on more projects. A communication drafter for writing those status updates that go to our customers. And then an org reporter that looks across the entire organization and writes various files and updates back to our Superbase database. So why would you use sub-agents? Well, a few reasons. One, each of these sub-agents uses their own context window. So with standard Claude, you're thinking about 200,000 tokens. If we've got 20 or 30 projects running at once and we're asking Karolina to go and do all of this analysis all in one go, like any human, just blows up her mind. There's just too much. I can't cope with all of this information. So instead, she fires off a different sub-agent for every single one of our clients. And each of those sub-agents comes back with a report on each of those projects. And all Karolina needs to do is then summarize that, put it into an email and send it back to us. Secondly, for sub-agents, you can choose a different model. So for Karolina, she's using Opus, which is the most powerful of the models. But we can use Sonnet or even Haiku, which is a smaller model, for some of these sub-agents to go and do sort of menial tasks and report back to Karolina. The biggest benefit for us in the context of Karolina's work is that all these sub-agents can work in parallel. So like I say, instead of Karolina having to go in series in a loop, go and find out about this project, go and find out about that project, she unleashes 10, 15, 20 of these sub-agents at once, allows them all to run in parallel. And then when they've reported back to Karolina, then she can consolidate that information and provide it back to us. All of this happens in the Claude Agent SDK. So this is just part of the Agent SDK work. So David, another good question there. How do you maintain an audit trail of Karolina's actions, including what context was hydrated, what decisions were made, and what system updates were performed? Really good question. So the way that we've set that up is that we've just set her up as a human user with an agent flag in our admin database. And so anything that Karolina does, updating a field, creating a document, sending an email, is tracked in the admin database, so we can see exactly what she's done and when, and we can audit it in the same way as we could for a human user in the platform. So covered a lot there. That was 40 minutes or so that we've gone into that. There's quite a lot of detail. What I'm going to point you to after this, we'll put it into the notes that we'll send out afterwards. I'm going to give you access to the docs from Claude, and it's these Agent SDK docs. This is where I started with my work of building out Karolina, was using Claude Code to build a local agent. And this is where Karolina first started, was running on my laptop, until I got to that point of like, why do I have to be involved in this? Can't you just do the work on your own? So once you've then built your agent, then I'll point you to this guide here, this hosting the Agent SDK. And this is where we took it to the next level of moving this up into a Vercel sandbox, where Karolina lives and can run and do her work without me needing to be involved. So we'll send a few of those things out to you afterwards. The next thing I wanted to show you is like, okay, well, you've shown me some of the technology. How do we actually go about designing our own Karolina? How do we build our own agent? And for this, I've built a skill, of course. I wouldn't do anything without building a skill. Now, I love this book. This book is called The Qualified Sales Leader. It's by five-time public chief revenue officer John McMahon. And the book is aimed at any kind of sales leader, chief revenue officer that is running a sales team and is trying to manage and inspire their team in terms of how to forecast accurately and close deals. And so I'm going to take the example of, right, I want to build John as a chief revenue officer agent. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So what I've created is an agent builder skill in Claude. If you're not familiar with skills, go to some of the previous sessions that we have done where we've talked about skills, but they are just so influential in terms of how we're working now using these AI tools. But this agent builder skill takes me through a bit of an interview. What is it that we want this agent to do? And what are the sections that we're going to complete in terms of giving this agent a role and an identity? And I really think about how we would handle this for a human. What is their role? What are their jobs? What are their jobs to be done? Their inputs and outputs. How do people communicate with them? And how do people, how do they communicate with people? How do we measure the quality of them? And all of these bits and pieces. So let me just flip over to my Claude desktop, which is over here. And I'm just going to say, hey, Claude, can we use our agent builder skill to start building and defining a new agent? I want to build a chief revenue officer called John, which is modeled on John McMahon, who wrote The Qualified Sales Leader. You'll notice that we've already got a skill for John McMahon, which is a great basis, but I want to now turn John into an agent that can run autonomously up in Vercel. So here I'm using a thing called Claude Cowork, which is a kind of agentic platform. It's a bit like Claude Code, but for knowledge work. And this allows Claude to work on some kind of long-running tasks where we can track Claude's progress over a period of time. So here you can see I'm launching the agent builder skill for development. This is where I've taught it how to build an agent. Let me also upload the John McMahon skill so that we've got the right foundation. Great. I've loaded the agent builder and I've reviewed the existing John McMahon skill. Good foundation to work from. Current skill handles deal inspection. Excellent, excellent. Here's how this will work. Two phases. Don't worry, we're not going to spend 60 minutes on this because we've got 15 minutes left. Phase one defines the agent. Phase two designs the executable skill package. We'll work through it conversationally. Let me capture what I already know. So starting point, agent name, role type, chief revenue officer, based on John McMahon, and then the runtime, standalone agent SDK. Let me kick off section one with a couple of questions. Who does John report to? I'm assuming me. Yes, John reports to me, Charlie, the CEO. No one else is going to review his work at the moment. As we build out our sales leadership team, then he may be a peer to some of our sales leaders. What's different about John as an autonomous agent? Well, at the moment, it's great. I can chat with John through Claude or through Kowalah Reserved, and John's got access to our HubSpot. John's got access to our Zero. So this is all great. John's got access to Granola for all of our call notes, which is great. But I have to initiate all of these conversations. And what I want is John to do the job of a CRO in terms of managing our forecast, initiating pipeline reviews, initiating deal inspection. I want John to come and tell me that a deal that I'm working on is missing information or that I have not got a champion, I've got a coach. So I want him to be working in the background doing that and then bringing me in when needed. And this for me, I talked earlier about like giving them a name is so important to me. If I was going to build a revenue management agent, I would fall into the trap of I'm going to build a bit of software that I can use to track our forecast. I don't want another bit of software that can track our forecast. I've already got that. What I want is John to just do the job that I would want him to do. That's really clear. So the big shift is from reactive coaching to a proactive CRO. John stops waiting to be asked and starts owning the revenue operation. Let me capture what I'm hearing. So he reports to me. Yes, yes, yes. What's out of scope? Should he be closing deals himself? Okay. Yes, to be clear, what's out of scope? John is not the seller. John is not going to be communicating with clients. John is not going to be emailing prospects, booking meetings. He is strictly, internal, inspecting, forecasting, coaching. I'm the one doing the selling. John should be able to communicate with me through Slack, also email, and then in the future, I'm going to wire up GChat. He should also be able to use our MCP server so that he can update HubSpot directly. For those of you that have not been on one of our webinars before, I'm using a tool called Whisper Flow to talk to Claude. All I need to do is press my function button and then talk. And then when I let go of my function button, it puts all of the words that I'm saying there. I have completely stopped typing. I just don't type anymore unless I'm on a train and I really can't talk. It's just too slow typing. So anyway, that's what I'm using there. WISPRFLOW. So perfect. Section one is locked down. Let me capture it cleanly and move to section two. So this is who is right. Operational jobs. This is the big one for John because we're defining what he actually does autonomously. Let me start thinking about it. Right. I want him to do pipeline health monitoring, regularly scanning HubSpot, forecast management, building and maintaining the forecast roll-up. Yeah. Deal inspection, diving into specific deals when triggered. Two questions. What cadence feels right for the proactive stuff? So I want John looking at our pipeline on a daily basis and picking out individual deals where he thinks there are gaps, especially if we've got upcoming meetings with those deals that week. Then I want a forecast at the start of the week, midweek, and the end of the week, which I want to happen on a schedule. But the key thing is that the moment that John spots a problem, come and tell me straight away so that I can do something about it rather than being told about it at the end of the week. Just talking about Whisper Flow here. like if I was typing, I just wouldn't give that much context. It would be much shorter than that. So I find I provide a lot more than I would this way. So I'm not going to go through the whole of this process, but what I think you can see with this agent builder skill is this is interviewing me, because this is how I built the skill, interview me about the job that I want John to do. This is almost like you're building out a job description that you might be providing to HR to go and hire. What does John need to do? What are his metrics? How are you going to score him? What are his incentives? What tools are you going to give him? This is exactly the process that we're building. What I would do at the end of this will create for me an agent definition of what John is going to do. I would then hop straight over to Claude Code where we've got an agent template, and I would just copy this straight in and say, right, fire up my John McMahon skill, my John McMahon agent. This is what we want. So this is the process. I would encourage you to think about building your own skill to define your agent, the first step, and then you can start thinking about the Claude Agent SDK and the Vercel sandbox in order to put it in there. Right. Let me hop back over here. So we've gone deep today on agents, but for me, over the last I want to say 4 weeks, as I've gone through this transition of moving Karolina from working on my laptop to working up in the internet, has been one of the biggest mental shifts for me as I really challenge myself about the concept of what is an agent and how do we build one that actually works and is effective. So 7 minutes to go. I want to touch on a bit of AI in the news. And as I say, any other questions that come through, please keep them coming. AI in the news, a lot going on. And the one thing that I want to touch on before we wrap today was a big launch that happened yesterday from Anthropic. Now, I feel like a little bit of a stuck record each week because over the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks, it's been Claude's launched this, Claude's launched that, Claude's launched this. But this is the fact. Like I'm getting these updates. I have an agent that runs every week on a Wednesday to tell me what's been launched from Gemini, from Copilot, from Grok and ChatGPT. The other teams are just not shipping at the rate that Anthropic is. And so this is why each week we're talking about new stuff that is coming out from Claude. But yesterday afternoon, Anthropic launched some big updates into their enterprise use cases, primarily around how enterprises can use co-work and these skills. So let me just dive back over to Claude here and into our co-work. Sorry, John, I'll come back to you a little bit later. So what they launched yesterday was an improved ability to have plugins. Now, a plugin is like a wrapper around a series of skills that either Anthropic have created or companies like Salesforce or Apollo have created. And so you go to your plugins here, either as an organization or as an individual, and we go browse plugins. And here you can see a number by Anthropic, or you can create your own. And so some new ones here, an updated one. So marketing, legal, data, Slack by Salesforce, Apollo. So let's just take a look at, for example, we were talking about project management. Let's look at operations here. So questions like evaluate a vendor, document a business process, create a change request. So let me install this operations one. Great. And let me click on manage. And now we've just uploaded this plugin into Claude. So what is this plugin? Well, it includes a certain number of commands that you can use, capacity plan, change request, and so on. And then a number of skills, change management, compliance tracking, process optimization. So let's just have a look at process optimization. What does that mean? Let's click on that. And so here is the skill that we've just had loaded up. Process optimization, the description, analyze and improve business processes, trigger when this process is too slow, how can we improve, and so on. And then just like I showed you earlier, a skill is just a set of words, a description, a way of doing something. Map the current state, identify the waste, design the future state, measure the impact, output. Now, these are very basic skills, especially when you start looking at maybe some of the legal ones. You might say, right, well, our contract review is way more complex than this. But what I would suggest with these pre-built plugins and skills is to use them as a starting point, as inspiration, and you can then go and edit them to follow your own way of working. So I just installed that operations one. So what we'd had here, process optimization, it would be as simple as me then going, right, I want to use this skill, help me optimize a process. And suddenly it's got all of this knowledge that it can use. The second thing that was launched yesterday as part of this big update was a load of new connectors. So if I go here, browse connectors, you're going to be able to see a ton in here, but there were loads of new ones that were created in order to help you with enterprise use cases, including things like Outreach, including DocuSign, including Slack. And then a week or so ago, the Granola one, which I love for call recording. Increasingly, what we're seeing is that with Claude as your hub, you're able to have all these connections into your other systems. You're then providing these skills to show you that how we do things. And it's just a completely different ball game compared to using, at the moment, sadly, Gemini or anyone that's on Copilot or any company that has built their own Acme GPT as a front end is just nowhere able to compete with this. Another question here from David, thank you. And this touches on this, like given the current pace of development between Anthropic and OpenAI, if you personally had to commit to only one ecosystem for the next 6 to 12 months, which would you choose and why? For me, it's Claude and it's Anthropic. I'm doing all of my development in Claude Code, even though I know Codex is very, very good and a lot of great feedback that Codex is really nailing it at the moment. But I've customized Claude Code so well at the moment. I feel that is working super well. But it's these kind of use cases on the enterprise, the knowledge work that are just accelerating away from where ChatGPT is with a GPT that has not advanced in 2 years since they launched it. I've gone very, very fast. We've got 1 minute to go. And so let me just show you what we're talking about next week. Let me go. Where do I want to go? Here. Next week, I'm going to be talking a bit about the things that I've touched on, Granola and Whisper Flow. We're going to be talking about voice use cases. So voice in through Whisper Flow and voice out using Granola to capture all of your notes and then put them back into your systems. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy building your very own Karolina. If you've got any questions, just ping us on LinkedIn, on X, or send us an email. And very happy to show you a bit more about the inner workings of Karolina and the other agents that we've got. See you next week.